Okay, all right, this is the Public Safety Service Delivery Working Group, April 7th. Ray, could you call the order? The roll?
Yes, is Carol Allen here or not?
I don't know.
Jeffrey One,
Present.
David Ritma. Here. Victoria Rizzo.
Here.
Father Harrington.
Here.
Danny Stephenson.
Here.
Rich Allen.
Here.
Everybody's here.
Everybody's here. All right. You know, it's just really weird not to do the Pledge of Allegiance this meeting. All right, number 2, public comment. Do we have anybody in the public that wants to speak?
Sure. We're here to answer questions for you. Today.
Would you please introduce yourself for the record? Makes it easier.
How are you, Rich?
Doing good.
So my name is Kerry Kerr. I am the Chief Deputy of the Law Enforcement Division for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. I was formerly a Troutdale police officer for 13 years. So I have a lot of historical information and some other information that may be helpful. I've watched some of these meetings. I'm sure Ray's surprised we're here because we've been trying to get invited. So we invited ourselves to make sure that
public
information
meeting,
was
sir.
getting across that should get across. And I'm here to answer any questions throughout the evening that if something were to come up, I'm happy if I'm able to answer, or I'll get the answer for all of you. So,
Thank you, I'm
Thank
glad you're
you.
here.
Well, it's good to see you.
you too.
I'll introduce myself too, just in case I don't want to steal your shine, but I also work for the Sheriff's Office. I'm John Harms-Millet. I'm the Business Services Division Director, so I'm the numbers guy, Carrie's the policing guy. So hopefully between the two of us, if there's questions, we can answer those. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you, I'm glad you're here. Thank you. All right, so we are on the number 3, consent agenda, 3.1, minutes, February 10th, 2025. Did anybody get a chance to read the minutes?
Make a motion, we adopt the consent agenda, 3.1 minutes, February 10th, 2025.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Penny is seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, passes. All right, number 4, update on police contract negotiations.
All right, Madam Chair, you have in front of you a document, one that I put together that some of you may have seen before, where it kind of tracks the positions of the city of Troutdale with the proposals from Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. The last column is simply informationally where I took the original FTE numbers and simply applied it to the current FTE numbers that the Sheriff's Office provided. Then about a week ago, the sheriff, our two guests, and Carlos, who's a county counsel for the Sheriff's Office, met with Mayor Ritma and myself and Ed Trumke. And out of that meeting, the Sheriff's Office sent this new proposal that you have, draft exhibit, to us on Thursday. And it is something that at this point just need y'all to discuss it and ask questions and let me know if you have any specific direction or not generally. Specifically as to the actual negotiating position, as you recall, it's not necessarily out of this full committee because it is a negotiation, but generally run by the contract group that you've approved, Jeffrey, Mayor Ritma, and Tanny, and Ed, and myself. But it's an opportunity for you to ask questions and give suggestions on how we should respond for the 5 of us to consider before we make an official statement back to these guys.
Well,
Dave?
if I may, Ray, I was gonna mention the sheriff's, I mean, we discussed at that time that the large increase in the sheriff's contract for the city was causing us to think about starting our own police department. And since you didn't mention it, is there anything wrong with bringing that up? I mean, that was part of our discussion.
No, it's not. I mean, the meeting was, first of all, to impress upon the sheriff's office that we only have so much money. We're already looking at, a $500,000 increase in fire for next year, and this substantial increase in fire services. We talked about the history and promises made. We've talked about these in these meetings back in 2015. And essentially the bottom line came down to, one, we can't afford what you were asking. We just can't. We don't have enough money for that. The budget's already as tight as it is. And unless you want us to, I think, cut the whole Parks Department would be the only thing to make up those two losses. We couldn't afford that. The second thing that was discussed, of course, is that it seemed mutually acceptable that our agreement shouldn't go more for than a couple, 2 or 3 years, to give us an opportunity, one, to look for additional revenue streams, which we've talked about before overall, and second of all, to see if the citizens want to pursue returning the Troutdale Police Department back to activity. And so we left that meeting with those topics of conversation, and this is what John put together for us to come back to. So is that pretty much just the nutshell?
Okay, I came away from that meeting thinking that the sheriff was acknowledging that we needed a transition for a couple years in order to, if we wanted to start up our own police department. I mean, we haven't made that decision, but if we were going to, it was going to take a couple years. And for that reason, the sheriff, I thought, very generously conceded that we could do a 2 or 3 year extension of our contract with the sheriff department while we assess the feasibility and see about starting up our own police department. That, to me, was the significant thing. The other was to come back with a lower cost proposal, which the sheriff department has done. So I was, I wasn't necessarily expecting that, but it was my impression that the fact that we were looking at starting our own department, which was based on numbers, we'd been saving money all these years, but the impression I got was that we were saving money because the sheriff's department was basically subsidizing their services to us, at least in some sense. I don't know exactly, but it wasn't full cost recovery.
I'll try to be gentle, David, how to say this, with 2 of the sheriff's office representatives. I think there was a consensus that the prior sheriff undersold what it cost to provide law enforcement services to the city of Troutdale.
Not completely accurate. So,
Can
Please,
you please come?
this is vital.
Thank you.
so first and foremost, I'm not speaking on behalf of the sheriff. I will say I was in that meeting. The sheriff wants to keep the contract with the city. We talked about a transition period because that is what was suggested by the mayor and Ray. We'd be happy to stay here for another 2 decades, although I won't be here that long. So really the cost, when we talk about cost, we have to figure that it was 2015 when this contract went into fruition. We're now 10 years later, and we've had contract negotiations in between where the deputies got a substantial pay increase. So that's where a lot of that cost comes in. And then you add the COLAs on top of that. And that's why he's here, is to explain all the numbers. But I just want to be clear that the sheriff doesn't want to end this relationship. She wants this to continue, and we've done everything that we can, and we think that there's been, not all the information is getting across of what we've talked about in the emails that happen. Thus the reason we are here this evening, to make sure that all your answers, or all your questions are answered. I'll explain the fiscal
I can add, is it,
a little bit.
I don't know what the rules of order here, is it okay if I add on?
Go ahead.
Okay,
Do whatever Ms.
Okay.
Allen tells you to do.
I will stop talking when you tell me to stop talking, I promise. Yeah, and I think, just, I fully agree, I think to address the piece about the large jump, large increase, sudden jump, however you want to characterize it, from your current year to the next proposed year. The way to think about it for us, and what Chief Carey was just talking about, is it's not sudden. That cost has been steadily increasing for the full life of this contract. You almost have more than an increase for the life. We have. So I understand that it seems sudden when you look at dollars for this year and dollars for next year. Totally get that. That cost has been steadily rising. And it's a cost that it's just, I don't know if it's ironic or confusing or what have you, it still doesn't totally make sense to me. We don't have a say in that cost. So we inherit that cost from the county. We inherit it from the county setting that cost for management employees, for us. We also inherit it from labor negotiations that are between the county and our deputy sheriff association. We're not a party to that. So much in the same way that you all receive those costs from us and they look high, we're inclined to agree. That's been a lot of costs that we've borne over the life cycle of this contract. We don't have, Chief Carey and I don't have the ability to set that cost or artificially make that cost higher or lower. We don't have that all the time. So I just want to be clear about that. I hate saying it's out of our hands, but it really is.
It really is, and thus the reason we came back with cutting back on some resources that got us to this last $5.6 million.
Yeah, my reference was, there's no way for us to verify or argue with the sheriff's office about what their numbers are for what each FTE costs them. I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm just saying it's a losing battle for us to argue about those. I was referencing to undersold the FTEs that the city requires, because the sheriff originally said we needed 16.5. Then originally the sheriff's office came back last August and said we needed 25.5. And now they're down to providing 18, the one we just got the other week. So I think that's consistently been your biggest concern, is that we were not allocated sufficient FTE really to cover the true cost of what it costs to cover us. And
Very much so.
It's both. It's the initial FTE, but then it's also that growth over the years. And the current arrangement accommodates for growth of costs over years, but it specifically accommodates a COLA to a cap. And there have been many other cost drivers that fall outside of those parameters in the 10 years. So like, for instance, 2 years ago, we met with Ray and his financial team to discuss a market adjustment, which is not a COLA. To me, I kind of thought they were the same thing. Turns out they are not the same thing. There was a COLA that was set by the county or agreed on between the county and the Deputy Sheriff's Association. There was then a market adjustment as a result of sort of a collective of other labor negotiations in the area. The whole market rose. And that was, don't quote me, another 6.5% above the COLA. So we discussed that with Ray. That specific language is not in the contract. So for us, our cost of each deputy sheriff that works in Troutdale went up by an additional 6.5%. For you all, your costs did not move as a result of that. So those things compounding over 10 years is happening.
right, and one of the reasons that we have those caps in contracts is because we don't control those contracts. We have no say in what they pay their deputies and what the overhead costs are. And so in all our contracts fire, otherwise we always have a range just based on the CPI to protect us, because we're out of control on what those costs are. It's the same problem we have with the fire department issues. And so that's why we have range for that also.
And I think also, Ray talks about the number of deputies. We are trying to bring this down to the minimum point that I feel is the most safe for this community. It's not, has nothing to do with anything other than keeping this community safe. And I know in one of the meetings, Ray said, well, I can run this city with 3 deputies and a sergeant, which we know that that's just not true. And that would be irresponsible to do something of that nature. So I care about this city and I want the city to be safe. I would not come in here and plagiarize myself to say something that wasn't true or I didn't feel was true. I remember what it was like back when we didn't have a sergeant at night. 2 brand new Troutdale police officers working in the middle of the night and no supervision whatsoever. Those are the days that I don't want to happen here.
Any comments or questions?
Well, I appreciate your coming back to us, and also with a number that, whether we can afford it or not, we probably could. And also at least the suggestion by the sheriff that we could extend the contract a shorter time than another 10 years and try to, and my feeling as coming out of the meeting, which, I mean, I very much appreciate what you've come back with and what you're saying. I think we need to do a realistic assessment of whether we could start a police department or not. And for that, I don't quite know how to go about it, but I read the materials Ray has shared, I think maybe with the whole council, and I think probably with all of us, I don't know, but anyway, essentially it's a first step would be to hire someone who would be able to assess that situation from a professional level. I mean, we don't know anything except that we used to have a police department, and could we do
Very
it
good
again?
one.
And it was a very good one, and could we possibly do it again in this environment? And so I think that probably needs to be discussed at budget time, but this group needs to discuss, would we want to put out whatever you do to try to find someone who could assess Troutdale's needs and the realistic cost of looking at a police department, because we probably have, based on the sheriff's generous suggestion that a 2 or 3 year extension while we assess this was possible, which I really am grateful for that. We need to use that time well and try to decide. And so I don't know the remit of the Public Safety Services Delivery Working Group, but I mean, we could recommend to, at budget's coming up next week or something very soon, that we budget for trying to find and retain somebody who is an expert in setting up police departments to assess the situation. I just think we need to do that.
I will say, Mayor, I read the original consultation, and it's not even to the level Troutdale was when we dissolved. And moving forward, I think there's a lot of things that, if you decide to move in that direction, you have to look at all the ancillary things. Crime scene tech that we never had, that we were paying for. Troutdale was paying for through Gresham to have that. You have a lot of specialty units, drug units, detectives. And if you get in an OIS in this city, if
Would you explain to them what an OIS is?
sorry, an officer involved shooting. So we've had, unfortunately, 2 in the last couple of years, 3 in the last couple of years. They are very, very lengthy in process. And although, yes, you will get outside help from other agencies, ultimately it will be on some officer or your one detective that's going to have to work through that whole process. And that's just not feasible. And it would put you a lot of liability surrounding that. One OIS could last you 3-4 weeks of investigation. And if you're pulling officers off the street, Troutdale, we did our own investigations, we did our own fingerprinting, we had to clear our own warrants. We pull off the street because we didn't have a records 24/7 like we do now. So there's a lot of pieces that got left out when that consultant did his behind the scenes work of where he came up with those numbers.
Rich, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so I don't like to miss an opportunity, and so this is just help me understand. What I'm seeing is from the political side, and I still have an engineer's mentality. I care about reality,
Me
not
too.
politics.
Yeah.
But from a political standpoint, and I'm not gonna ask you to get into politics, don't worry about that. But it feels like we make one bad decision after another that just makes it harder on the officers, right? Seems to be improving right at the moment, but boy, did we make it hard. And I can't help but notice it, from what I'm seeing, and I don't see as much as you do, but from what I'm seeing, it seems like Portland is having a harder time with officer recruitment, retainment than Monona County Sheriff's. Is that attributed to a better working environment from Monona County Sheriff? Is that, are we having to raise our pay in order to compete? I just wanna know, is it a pay thing, is it an environment thing?
I think it's all of that. It's all of that. On the front end, we have, for a long time, a lot of agencies would hire and they wouldn't do an initial interview. It was you just went and took a test, and however you scored on that test, then you were invited to the next level of testing. Any candidate we get, we have 3 deputies sit down and speak with that candidate. And you get a lot out of looking at somebody and speaking with somebody other than just being on Zoom or just reading what they've written on a piece of paper. Does pay have a part of it? Yes, I think it does. Do I think the culture here has a bigger part of it? Yes. Everybody wants to come work for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. We have lots of specialty things that go on. We don't have the turmoil that a lot of different agencies have, including Gresham and including Portland.
Right.
I think that politically, we've never got into the strife that Portland does, and Portland's a big monster. They have, 800 plus officers, so with that comes more problems. But I will say that we have been fortunate to bring in good people, good men and women, to join here because of our reputation.
Right, and Monona County has a better work environment, I think, too.
Well, we're supported by our communities, and, that's a big deal for us. All our contract cities, all our citizens, we get thank you cards, we get meals brought to us, you name it. That's not happening at other places. It happens here because of the relationships we have.
So from a financial standpoint, do you have an idea or feel for how much it takes to entice an officer to want to do this work? Because we have made it harder for them. Is PERS becoming a big part of that cost? Surely you're experiencing some costs that have escalated on you that you haven't taken into account.
100%. I think that what we have experienced on the cost side in Multnomah County for the last particularly 3-4 years, that's a region, it's probably, I'm not as well versed on the nationwide picture. Certainly regionally, we're not an exception. Portland, Gresham, very similar conversations with their labor associations, very similar increases. That market all moves pretty closely together. So I don't see, I mean, Chief Carapine better than I would, I don't see for a entry deputy sheriff or an entry Portland police officer baseline pay being the biggest breaker. I think that that's probably less of an issue. I think the environments are different. They particularly between Portland and the county, they're pretty darn different. Because it's a smaller officer pool, I think the chief was talking about with being able to do different things. Portland has a lot of rotational, diverse opportunities as well. We just hear there's more that you can do as the average officer to go and do and learn and see different things. I think that appeals to a lot of people. And then just being a smaller number of officers, there is like an intimacy to that. I mean, pretty much everybody knows everybody. That can be hard to come by for bigger departments. I don't know. I hear that on the HR side, that it's that culture that people like.
We did see some of that in the merger, where there are some officers that had more seniority, they got to choose where they wanted to go. And they had some more choices open to them as to whether they wanted to do like the river patrol.
That's usually based on union contract though, not something that I can decide unless there's other factors involved. But
Right.
usually specialty units are based on a lot of things. There's still a process. We have a process for all of our specialty units, whether it's river or civil. You have to prove that you can do that job and do that job well. You don't just get a go because you have more seniority. There's processes involved.
So seniority is a
It's a piece.
consideration, but not the
Yeah.
driving factor.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Can you talk about how and why you calculate overtime into our costs?
Sure. Yeah. And so there's two ways we could have drawn this up for you, and we've talked to Ray and Eric Mueller about this. But if I say post factor, does that mean anything to you? Or that it shouldn't? It's I guess it's probably a very niche thing. Essentially, okay, for me, I'm a desk worker, right? If I'm sick for a day, I'm at my desk. Carrie doesn't walk down to my office and say, John's not here, we've got to backfill him. Right? My work doesn't get done. Usually what ends up happening is if I miss a Monday, my Tuesday is pretty hard. That's for me, right? For our posted work, whether it's jails or the road, we can't have that happen for patrol. We can't not send someone out on patrol, so if there's an emergency, there's no one to respond, so we've got to backfill. When we take your normal working hours as a deputy sheriff in our case, so say you got 20, 80 hours in your schedule, you work, 1,900 of them. Purely an example, in the year. The balance of those hours, the 180, we've got to backfill somewhere, right? And practically speaking, what that means is we've got to take another deputy sheriff who already has his or her normal schedule, and they've now got to work overtime to fill that shift. I call it structural overtime. I never know if that's the right term, but essentially it's when people take vacation, sick leave, someone's got to work for them. Okay. Two different ways I can articulate that on paper. I can say one FTE is not one body, it's really 1.7 bodies or 1.6 bodies, right? Or I can say you're paying for one body, but you're also paying for the overtime associated with that body. That's what we've opted for in here. So the FTE counts that are in there assume your deputy sheriff doesn't take a day off. Ever. It never gets sick.
If you calculate all these out though, you come up with more hours than possible to use. And so why is it our responsibility to pay the overtime when we're asking for a service to be provided? And sure, if someone calls in sick, that's not my problem. That's you guys fill that in. So why is that burden put onto the city?
I don't know what you mean by not being your problem.
Well, I think what it is, the numbers, we've talked about this before, is that at 5.5 FTE deputies, that's approximately 3,000 more hours than in a year, which is why that calculation is because it covers sick, training, vacations, et cetera. And so if overtime is, pardon?
It does not cover that, no. It's 10-hour shifts. So the thing I put in writing for you all outlines that to a T. You've got it in a PDF, where those numbers come from. It does not include training, overtime, all that. That's what the overtime is.
No, that's what I'm saying. You know, there's only, rough numbers, there's only 8,600 working hours in a year. But at 5.5 FTE for deputies, that is paying at regular time for 11,500 hours. So there's already 3,000 hours annually of extra payments made to cover all those things. And so I think the question is, if overtime is used to fill time beyond the normal 24 hours a day, why aren't we just paying under the regular deputy number for the deputies just needed to cover the hours of the year, since everything above that is going to be covered by overtime, it sounds like. So it sounds like we're paying twice for the same.
You're not, and honestly, I have written this to the letter in writing, so I don't want to deviate from that. I don't have it all committed to memory. So if you were to take what I wrote down, because I'm confident in that, and you have that document. We work 10-hour shifts, we don't work 8-hour shifts, right? So that's a 2-hour overlap on between each of those shifts, right? So that's 30 working hours. That's where that extra, I forget how many thousands of hours you said, number comes from, right? We use that overlap for range training, for instance. The reason we do that is because if we send someone to the range on 2 hours, that's straight time. That's not overtime. If we work an 8-hour shift and we have someone work 8 hours and then go to the range for 2 hours, we're paying 8 hours of straight time, 2 hours of time and a half. It actually costs us more money to do that. So that is what is accounted for in the FTE number. The overtime number is the sick and vacation pieces that I talked about. And I will also say, we looked at this 2 ways. We looked at it in a way where we modeled it. So we looked at the number of hours worked, the number of hours of vacation, sick leave, and said, this is the balance, this is what it would cost to actually pay for that service. We also just looked at actuals. I had asked my finance manager to go through each of our cost centers that are in Troutdale and say, how much overtime did we pay? And we put it in the original document that we gave you. The actual cost for us in overtime is $1.1 million. We have reduced that because of conversations with your leadership about you not being able to afford it. We've taken that number down to, is it 650 or 550? It's somewhere near half of what our actual cost is. So not only is it accounted for properly, certainly in my view, we actually took half of it off the table just to try to meet you where your costs are. We will still be paying that full 1.1. The county, as an entity, will not give us that money. We will just eat that cost for the duration of this contract.
And the only thing I will add, and this is something that almost every one of my chiefs, command staff, the sheriff's office has over the last 8.5 years, is a lot of the overtime is because you guys are short regular time deputies and they have to pull in overtime to cover regular shifts. That's what the managers of those people have told me for years.
Which also is not in here. So this assumes we are fully staffed. You do not lose a dime for us.
So I'm saying past overtime costs resulted from not having enough deputies. So it's like, so the argument would be, if you had enough deputies, overtime costs wouldn't be as high.
100%, and that's why we didn't include that in this number. It's not in there. The number would be higher if we did count that, but we agree. That's an internal service that we provide, staffing. That is not your problem.
That's what I said.
And I agree, that's why it's not in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree.
Kenny?
Okay, so, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but like on the overtime, right, we've got like 335 people in corrections, right? And then we've got like another 60 in patrol. So roughly 400 deputies and supervision staff. And so I'm looking at that, and that's basically what we have is like kind of 5% of that pool. Out of those people.
I apologize, I'm
Yeah, so the law enforcement division and the corrections division are totally separate entities. I don't control any part of the jail, any part of the corrections.
No, but it's
or
all
the-
part of the same budget.
that piece is accurate, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just didn't understand the first part.
So I guess what I'm saying is there's like 8.9 million in overtime, right, for these 400 officers. And so that puts us at like, our count's like 5% of that. So I'm just like, but and I know it's come down, but we were asked to pay like 12.9% of the overtime. And we have like 5% of the people.
You're talking about, I just wanna make sure I'm understanding.
Sure.
That, you said 8.9 million?
For all your overtime,
Where's that number coming from?
out of your budget,
Like the adopted, like last year's adopted budget?
this year's adopted budget, yeah. So it'd be the budget you're in now.
Current year's
Yeah.
adopted budget, okay. I don't know about the percentage calculation, I'll tell you already, well, I would say, don't quote me on this, I guess it's a public meeting, it's being recorded, so you're gonna be able to quote me on this.
Just qualify
As
your
of-
remarks, it's fine.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah.
Heavily qualifying my remarks then. As of, I would say January 1, we had spent more than that amount on overtime. That's not the real overtime figure. We have basically our full general fund allocation has a personnel block, and it's got a permanent line and it's got an overtime line. And unfortunately for us, those are artificially separated in there. The reality, like I think we're 100% overspent on corrections overtime, for instance. Largely because of the growing vacation, sick, many different types of leave, and also in the jails, we are grossly understaffed. But our real overtime number I can give you, I don't know off the top of my head what it is, I can assure you it's much, much bigger than 9.
I just wanna say, for the record, I think your budget's completely messed up. Okay?
Based on,
You've got a $4 billion budget for the county. 210 million of that is devoted to the sheriff's department and corrections. 118 million's devoted to the library operating budget. 347 million is devoted to homeless services. I'd keep going,
This is not personal to your operation of the sheriff's office, this is overall opinion of
yeah,
how the county is run.
okay?
understood, yes, sir.
And, but the other thing, another thing that's driven costs up a lot is there's been full-fledged, it looks like, departments added to the budget over the past 10 years. And I can't think of the names, but you know what I'm talking about. There's been like subdivisions added or oversight or whatever. There's been things added that didn't exist years ago. And maybe they were someplace else in the county's budget, but now they're in the enforcement budget.
We haven't added any units into the law enforcement division. It's been pretty status quo.
Certainly the overall county has that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't even think of the
Yeah, I-
names of them, but there's
Fair
been
enough.
like a different, I don't know, support piece that wasn't there before that's now there, that's a couple $1 million and this and that, things like that. So I think that, county leadership has put more strain on this system by adding things that weren't there before, that's taking more cost, putting it into the pool, thus diluting out what we have to work with.
Are you asking if there's like a charge back to the law enforcement side?
No, law enforcement's paying for it, for some of these things, but they weren't necessarily things that existed in the past. So either they were someplace else in the county's budget, or my personal guess would be they've been added in by county leadership.
Well, without specifics, there's lots of legislation and other issues
Right.
that will perpetuate those kinds of things.
And I guess my point is, these things have been added in, which is increasing the cost for the department, which in turn is gonna decrease the number of people we have on the street.
So there has not been any units, we've added maybe some OAs, maybe some office staff, but, law enforcement sworn members, I don't send them anywhere else other than to LE unit.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about
Patrol.
sworn officers, I was talking about office people,
Certainly that we've had to do
more.
more with the same or less staff on the civilian side. Yeah, I mean, consistently, at least over the time, I've only been here going on 9 years, but yeah.
And so, looking at this, and it's like, I get it, but it's like, over the course of the contract, right? The captain's gone up 78%. The deputies have gone up 94%. Detectives have gone up 93%. Some of the office staff, 108, 90, things like that. And I don't know if that's kind of a normal thing, that they go up that much over the course of the contract. But that's kind of, I think that's what's coming to roost. I mean, is that normal, that they go up that much over 10 years?
From my again, I am not fiscal, so I don't pay attention to that stuff. I will guarantee you a captain's wage or a chief's wage has not gone up 94% over the last 10 years.
I'm saying the cost to us, from what we're looking at now to what we were looking at in 2015, is like a 94% increase.
There's normal, I don't know quite how to qualify normal. I hear what you're saying, this is the only place I've worked in the life of the contract, but I would say you've had some relatively large cost of living adjustments. You've had some relatively large increases based on labor negotiations. You've also had, coming down from the state, like a bunch of different things that we pay into that we didn't used to, which has also increased that bottom line. Paid leave Oregon, the latest example. We all pay into that. That adds to the bottom line for you all. It eventually comes to you, comes to us. So I think that the combination of those things has been, I don't know, it has been significant. I don't know how to qualify it as normal or not normal, but yeah, it's a substantial change.
I will say that what our leadership is making is still not what Portland is making. So we're not the highest paid, that I can tell you.
And I'm not trying to
No, I understand what
indicate
you're
that at
saying.
all. I'm just trying to get
I
my-
just want to make sure, I want you guys to know that we're trying to give you the bang for your buck. I'm not sitting here and, selling something that I don't feel is reasonable, I guess is the best way to put it. We're not here to make money. In fact, like the mayor said, we've been losing money over the course of the contract, and again, that's not to our fault, so that's just the way.
And
the
it's not to
system-
our fault.
That's just the way the
It's also
system
not their
works.
fault.
the sins of the past.
Yes, sir.
Can sorry, I think it's one key thing I'm gonna mention and then ask a question. Going through all this, like, our goal here is to provide a service for the citizens, and so when we have analyzed some of the numbers and we've gone through, it's been really frustrating to see either the costs or the things added in or the things we didn't ask for, et cetera. And so I'm not gonna come off super friendly, but I am nice, I promise. But
You're fine. Totally understand.
I think that our main focus needs to be about the citizens and the people and what's best for them and the best interest of them. And I think that getting the best bang for your buck is a nice easy way to go for it. So whereas I disagree with having to pay overtime, I still don't understand that. You won't get me to understand it, so we won't try to go there. I do have a question. So we, as a city, pay Multnomah County taxes, and some of those that tax money goes to support the patrol divisions. How does that money we already pay and we should already be getting services for factor into what we get now?
I'm out of my depth on that question. We had, Ray asked that question at our last meeting or 2 meetings ago when we had our county attorney there, and he could explain it well, but I would be out of my depth to go into it, to be honest.
So are we getting extra services on top of this that we don't see, or?
Absolutely.
That you definitely are. I just don't want to tell you that that's.
Let me explain that, if I can help out a little bit, is that, the Multnomah County Sheriff's ability to provide coverage for anywhere in Multnomah County is based upon the discretionary decisions of the Multnomah County Commission. We may need 200 deputies to cover this county, but if they can only afford 100, we only get 100. So if we did not have any police department and the sheriff just covered us, well, that's great, except for if they don't have enough resources to respond as quickly as we would like, then jurisdictions enter into agreements with them. Sisters just did one a year or two ago to Deschutes County. They were always covered by the county with deputies, but they just wanted for their city to have more coverage than what the county said they could provide in general based on their overall budget. And so it comes down to the contract obligates the sheriff's office to provide us with a certain level of coverage, regardless of what the commissioners do. It's a contractual obligation on their part to provide this to us.
Partly true, the commissioners do not dictate how I run my law enforcement division or what services I
Yeah, but
afford
they can
this,
tell you got to get a nickel instead of a
what I
dollar.
afford this city. Again, I don't look at the money. I guess that's one difference about me, is I'm not looking at the cost recovery or the dollars and cents. I'm looking at what is the safest for the city.
I have to look at that. So I have
Yeah,
to be
absolutely.
responsible for it. And so I guess, when we say that we can afford 5.5 or 6 or 7, that has to be something that we have to take into account. How do we do with what we can afford, right? Like with what we can put out, how do we make this work? And so if I were to say to you, this is hypothetical, you have 11 on here. And we say, all right, that's great. Like, I really appreciate that you think that that's what we need. And it might be, like, that's why you do you, right? I do what I do, you couldn't do
Totally
it,
understand.
vice versa.
Yeah.
But I say, I can do this with 7, okay? How do we make that work? Is that something that because I'm hearing you say, I'm hearing you say, you need this, like, you can't do it with less, it won't be safe. But what we're saying is, like, I can't afford that. I want a Maserati, and that's the safest car for me because it gets, but I can afford the Ford Escort, right? Like, and that Ford Escort's getting me around and it's gonna be safe, whatever. But so is there a way we can
So I will
make
tell
that
you,
work?
yeah, I will tell you, I mean, we had those discussions when we were talking. We use the numbers that would keep this community the safest. If you can only afford 5 officers, we would still respond. It's all the back end piece, the investigation, the dope unit, the river patrol unit, detectives, all those pieces play a part into keeping the community safe. So yes, you could use just 5 officers, but then you're gonna have to use those officers to do all these ancillary duties, pulls them off the street. So you're getting less coverage on the street because they're gonna have to do all these other pieces now when the numbers are decreased, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the other thing just to add, if I may, particularly the piece about like, sort of what are you getting that's not in there? Like, how does that maybe connect to the other property tax that the community is paying? This is just one example. We provided, it's a couple of months ago, and I think we provided you all some information. I don't remember if it was this whole group or just to Ray and his team. Who responds when there's an emergency call in Troutdale? I don't know if this rings any bells, but those 2 patrol districts that you have in your current contract and what we've proposed you continue in the new contract, those are we call those Troutdale cars. We call those your all's cars. They patrol your districts. They generally respond to your calls. For half of your emergency calls in the last, I don't think we did the full life of the contract. I think it was this last 5 years. Another car is also responding. So it's a Troutdale car and the next district over, or the next district over this way, is responding to your call. So only in half, or I think it was less of instances, are you just getting the patrol resources that are dedicated in that contract. It's very much a system response.
Yeah, but our cars are also going to respond to other places too.
It's-
Absolutely, 100% the case.
That's true, but if they go respond elsewhere, if a call comes out, there'll be some other car, to come here. Let me give you an example of a traffic fatality, just for instance, you have a traffic fatality and you have one officer working. It will take the help of all the other jurisdictions and other deputies coming to help, but they're only gonna help to a point, and then again, that officer is stuck doing the reconstruction and going and doing the investigation, interviewing witnesses. So there's a lot more than just having a car available. It's the whole piece. And yes, if you were to say we can only afford 5 cars, there's nothing we can do about that. We would work hard to give you the best service ever. As always, I will always do that.
All right, thank you.
Rich?
Oh, I'm sorry, did the carry on?
No?
Yeah, I personally have no issue with how well the jurisdictions work together and the process. That only becomes a concern for me if there's like a chronic need, like a particular jurisdiction just didn't pay for enough people to really meet their need. And so they're constantly needing help, right? The basic needs, not just the crossing. So that's what I actually think that the interactions between the cities and crossing over each other and helping where it's needed, I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
And then to a point that Kenny had pointed out earlier, we get these mandates from federal and state that cost us, right? We don't really have it, they're unfunded and we don't really have a choice, right? I think the concern there would be, is Multnomah County actually adding requirements, not because anybody's asking you to, not because it's a better way of doing things necessarily, because that can be okay. And so maybe I should put it like this, is Multnomah County adding requirements that cost us money that are discretionary outside of Multnomah County? Not just the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department, but outside of that.
None that I am aware of.
The phenomenon that personally I've experienced the most here is the state articulates a new requirement. And whether it's said explicitly or not, the purpose of that requirement is to bring some number of counties, none of them named Multnomah, into the fold on a particular issue that we have already been addressing in Multnomah County, but because there's a new compliance, because there's a new requirement as a result of that, we still end up needing to bear some new burden. It's like a perfect, really recent example. Last year, the state decided to get very specific on background investigations. Now, we have an extremely thorough background investigation, covers a lot of different things. We've had it for years and years. But the state decided to specify, again, please don't quote me, I want to say it's like 250 items to the letter that you've got to have in your background investigation. We had to change how we do it, our timelines, our forms, all that other kind of stuff. We didn't receive any money for this. It just ended up being a larger administrative burden, more staff time, not sworn staff, but all our office staff are bearing this. That kind of thing has not been atypical.
Yeah, and Gresham has to bear it, Multnomah County has to bear it,
100%.
Portland has to bear it.
Regardless of the quality of what we've been doing prior to that, doesn't.
But outside of things that all the police departments, law enforcement, I should say, or sure, all the law enforcement jurisdictions, outside of that, Multnomah County's not voluntary and saying, hey, we're gonna start spending this extra money for some reason, in which case we're gonna have to evaluate reason.
Nothing I'm aware of that's law enforcement related.
Yeah, I think the biggest impacts the last few years have been accreditation, which is a state level mandate. We had the statistical transparency policing, that was a fairly big lift, also state level, that was nothing that Multnomah County sort of went out ahead and did.
And the accreditation is something that your policies and procedures meet a specific standard. And all agencies had to be there by July of this year, I believe.
Depends on the size. Bigger
Depending on the
agencies
size.
first, yeah.
So that was something, and again, you know, it helps liability wise when you have, policies and procedures in place that are sound and that you can defend if there were any issues that were to arise. We were accredited at the city of Troutdale. But I would say it would be much more difficult, for the city to become reaccredited. You almost have to, we were lucky because we had an officer who was having a baby, so she was pulled offline. So again, we worked short and didn't backfill. We just had to suck it up, because there was no money. And again, you're working shifts without supervision. So there's lots of things that I could say in, you know, from 2002 to 2015. Again, great agency, I loved it, loved everybody we worked for, but we were still behind. We were still behind everybody, cars wise. Even cars, if you decide to open your own agency, just so you know, there's a year before you can get a car. Because we're competing with everybody with Ford and Chevy. And when you have agencies like LA County that orders 4,000 vehicles and we want 24, we're way down here on the list. So I think, you know, a lot of the pieces of that accreditation helped us move forward, but then we were stagnant at the end. I can't put my finger on why other than money. Money was holding the agency back.
Right. I think what you're seeing is the group here just trying to understand why are the costs getting increased so much that,
100%.
I'd do it for free if I could, I'd be honest with you.
right?
I would.
Twyla?
Yeah, I had a question. One of the things that came up in a recent survey we did of our citizens from our Public Safety Equity Advisory Group was that they had the feeling that in the past there was much more visibility of our sheriff's deputies within the community, in the streets, in the neighborhoods. And then this group looked at some data of kind of where the cars were during the day, 24 hours. It was over a period of time. And that really showed that the officers were spending most of their time kind of on the main thoroughfares. And I think that was really, when you looked at the community, one of the things they really felt made them feel safer was having that visibility. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that and.
Well, look at me.
So
Chief
I would be happy to explain that. No, I addressed that. I saw, Ray showed me the maps. I will say part of that is the constant ask to do traffic enforcement that keeps the deputies on the main arteries, because you're not having speeding and other issues within,
Chief Deputy,
in the
don't go that
towns.
direction with me, because
We dealt with this when he was a judge in Troutdale, so, but he showed me that, and yes, I'm not okay with that, so I addressed it right away and asked them to spend more time driving through the neighborhoods. I agree, we should be present, we should be seen, and I am working on that.
Twyla, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was gonna bring that up, because I was also part of that group at one time, and when we saw the survey, and people were not feeling safe, because they were not seeing officers at all. And that's a concern that I still have. And I talk to people in our community, and when you don't see an officer all day long, they're wondering where they are. And, you know, of course, when you turn on the news, you're hearing that a lot of the police officers are like Wood Village or Fairview, or they're further down. They're not in Troutdale, so people are concerned. And so, I'm glad that you're addressing that. I guess my job as a city councilor is how do I help our community feel like they are being safe and that that your officers are here. They're not just running here as a home base and then taking off to another city.
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things, they could come out and ride with us, spend some time with us, spend some time with the deputies, it goes a long way to see what a deputy does all day or all evening. Come out for a few hours and just experience what's going on. If you have like a neighborhood association or a neighborhood meeting, please invite us. We attend them. You bring up Wood Village, Fairview, they have a lot of those type meetings that we get invites to. So if we're invited somewhere, I will make sure that we're present and we're there. We want to keep our relationships going with our community members. We want them to feel safe.
I just don't know if we have that many, safety,
I remember we used to have
Groups here.
National Night Out every year and each neighborhood had their own. And then we would go visit each one for an hour or two, you know, those kinds of things kind of
they did.
fall off of importance for people, but I think they are important and that would help the relationship with the sheriff's office in our community.
Well, we have First Friday, so maybe having a booth,
Yeah,
if possible.
Yeah.
Just making your presence known. I know I went to a night out in Oregon City, and I tell you, they blew me away. I mean, there's gotta been, what, 20 officers there. I mean, they were huge, and they were available, and they had all this equipment with them that people could look at and ask questions.
We
and
did that in Wood Village
I
and
drooled, because I
and
wish
Maywood
we
Park. We're happy to do it.
had it here. Any other comments? No?
And I'm always available. I'm here in this building. I'm always available. The one time I didn't answer, Ray, I was on vacation when I didn't answer my email. Although Ray
What
has,
overtime coverage on that vacation? Somebody had.
they don't backfill for me.
He doesn't get there, Phil.
I don't get overtime either. But I always have my phone, always available. My phone's on 24/7. And it has been for the last 20+ years.
I didn't know that. Man,
We should have called.
Yes,
We'll put it on the Facebook page.
I have his personal too.
you know that I can change the routing though, right? Damn. Just so you know.
Rich?
So I do share some of the concerns that were expressed by Juan and staff and said about, you know, as you imagine, how do we afford this and how do we, you know, provide safety for our citizens? So, you know, so I share those concerns. But there's one other concern that I have that I don't know if anybody else has. And it's when the interest of Troutdale differ from the interest of Monona County. And you saw this during the original negotiations too. This was one of my concerns back there. What gets enforced? Is it going to be Monona County will gets enforced, or is it Troutdale's will gets enforced? Provided it's legal, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, by defense, I was not part of any of those original contract discussions. That was all Ray and
No.
Ray and the lawyers at the time and our chief.
That was one of
None of us officers were involved other than command staff. When we are providing a service for a contract city, again, I care about this city. So they will get 100% of our time when they need it.
Yeah, so a city like this, we're gonna wanna feel like we have some control over our destiny.
I guess you would have to tell me what that looks like. What control do you want? Because I get calls from him all the time, well, emails, he doesn't call me all the time.
Most of my contact goes through by a designated command
Right.
staff.
And your community resource deputy.
Yeah, but I try to do that through Captain Stewart too, so
Yeah.
So
there
There's
is,
probably gonna be more or less what problems in the city are we concerned about, which may be totally different, because it is a different environment here than it is if you get closer into Portland. It's almost different worlds.
oh, absolutely,
And so what concerns us might be different than them, and
agreed.
we might see things in our community that we want attention given to. And we would work through our city manager, of course, to put more focus on one thing over another. And if we're trying to direct focus on one thing over another, but Monoma County has a different idea, well, then who wins?
So Monoma County doesn't decide how I run my law enforcement division. Okay, that's my job and what I tell my command staff to do or fix. So if I'm aware of something, if somehow, some way, my command staff or myself are made aware of something, we're happy to run missions. We want to run traffic missions. We're doing another one coming up. We're happy to do hotspot if there's a place where you're seeing, you know, yard stuff's being stolen or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, we might see criminal activity, coming out in one area, right?
Yep, and if you
It may
can,
never get reported, you know.
if you can identify those, if you're aware of them, but if you can identify those, I'm happy to, like we have the overlap like John was talking about, I can put a couple officers out there. It's not gonna affect any coverage at all. I can put a couple officers out there to take care of that issue, just like we do our missions. It's no different. But I have to be aware. I have to be aware of the issue.
So you would lean towards the city in those kind of cases.
Absolutely.
All right, I appreciate it.
We literally our deputies, my deputies are at your beck and call.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it.
Part of it, if I can add to, sorry, this is not my area, but just part of what I struggle with on the cost side, not with Troutdale specifically, but with everybody we work with, is, you know, I understand wanting visibility policing, wanting to feel like your needs are met, responded to. I feel the exact same way as a resident. I want that same thing too. And a lot of the cost that we bear for our work is invisible at that level. And it's tough to, I guess, even to your earlier question about how do we make sure residents feel safe and they understand what we're doing. I've struggled with this too, as we've had a lot of these conversations. Investigations is a big example. We have thousands and thousands of investigations that we do countywide every year. 36% of them travel. That's not, I mean, I'm glad, I don't want people to have to think about that, because those are generally the worst crimes, right? We're generally prioritizing the most severe crime. More than a third come out of this city, and it's expensive work, it's intensive, it's time consuming, but it doesn't, it's invisible. It doesn't provide that sense of autonomy and that sense of visibility to people. Same thing with our records work. It's a lot of this stuff where I think, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but reading between the lines, if you do move towards a police department where it's truly the Troutdale Police Department again, absolutely, I think you get increased feelings of autonomy, down to branding, things like that, right? It certainly gives some assurances there. The invisible stuff is the stuff that I think is an enormous workload, and it is really hard to replicate, and it takes a lot of our staff time and costs. So I don't know why I feel the need to mention that, but I think it is something that's hard to.
Let me leave you with one more,
So I appreciate it.
Fair, I appreciate it.
let me leave you with one more example. You have Reynolds High School. It's one of the biggest high schools in Oregon. We get 60 to 80 child abuse reports out of that high school every month. Every month we get out of there. And we have to go through those. I have to have my detective sergeant go through every one of those. And we have to pick which ones meet the highest threshold to investigate. Should we investigate every one? Probably 95% of them, but we're going through those every month. And that would be on your one detective if you were to start your own PD.
Reynolds Heights Road, is for Rockford,
Agreed.
why would it
Agreed.
all be the burden on us when a lot of those kids don't live in Troutdale?
Great question. I will tell you, because the Reynolds School District buses kids from even Portland into
Yes,
their
we
school district. And they come to that school and they report to our SROs and the teachers and the abuse that's going on. It automatically becomes a Troutdale issue that we have to initially investigate. If it's a child that lives in Portland, we'll still review the case and we'll send that to Portland. But problem is we still have to touch every single case that comes out of that school. So yeah, it's a great point.
Carla?
We're not investigating, right, for the most part, property crimes anymore, just personal crimes.
Yeah, we investigate property crimes. Usually it depends on the threshold.
Okay,
I can get you, I don't have enough time.
so I'm just reading here, property crimes are no longer assigned to the detective unit.
Yeah, so those are your simple garden gnome stolen out of your yard, 2 garden gnomes stolen out of your yard. What we do is if we get a theft of property call, again, it's not that it goes away, we just don't have the time for the amount of cases to go investigate somebody's stolen trailer, for instance, although I would like to go find it for you.
And I'm not gonna pick on you guys because I do think you do a great job, but I gotta give you an example of someone that lives across the street from me. They had their home broken into when they were gone, and there was $12,000 worth of tools stolen from their home. These people went to the effort of putting WD-40 on everything that they touched so they wouldn't leave fingerprints or anything. And they called and nobody would come out and take a police report.
For a burglary?
They were not home when this happened.
Well, my expectation, if you call for a
Okay,
burglary,
hang on. Then a week later, they came back and broke in again. Still no police report. And I did talk to Doug about this stuff. And recently, and this is just kind of my frustration living across the street, because they're talking to me and they're like, what the hell are you doing up there at the city? And recently, there was a situation where someone had been on their property, living underneath their crawl space. I can't even go into that. But he had a weapon, and there was 6 county sheriffs there and 3 Gresham there. And they accosted this dude, got him out of there, which is great. I mean, everybody and his dog came down there. Nothing on the police report.
do you know when that took place?
It was about a month and a half ago, probably, maybe 2 months ago. I can get you the date.
Please.
And it just, I guess my point is, I thought they did a great job, because they distracted him, and guys went around the back of the house, and it was pretty cool. I was impressed, but I guess the point is, how does something like that, with that many people, not make a police report?
So I'm gonna go out on a limb here and I'm gonna say I can guarantee you there's a police report. If they brought a dog out and we used force on the guy to pull him out of there, it's mandatory that a report is written.
The report that we were given from the county did not have that on there.
Okay.
It did not exist on that report.
If you can give me the date and the
And it's just,
address,
and so these people now sold their home
yeah, that's unfortunate.
because they don't feel safe in Troutdale.
Kenny, I'm gonna email both you and Carrie right now, so you guys are connected by email, so you can carry on the conversation.
Okay,
Yeah, that would be great. Yes, that is unacceptable, if that's the case.
I do think it's like anything, most of these guys do a fantastic job. But I think we always need to strive to be better.
100%.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But we have 25% of the personal cases in Multnomah County.
35.
Yeah,
35% of the personal cases,
So
child abuse and things of that nature.
35% of the cases that we investigate originate in travel. Yes.
That goes back to the good question, does that include the large volume that comes out of the Reynolds High School?
no, so
That's
again,
Kevin.
yeah, so again, you know, again, we'll touch those cases, we won't necessarily investigate.
Right,
those
that's what I'm
all the way
saying, it
through.
may be a different level
So,
of need in other cases. You
but
touch them,
that's-
oh, it's Portland's problem.
The child abuse cases are totally just a piece,
Yeah.
a piece of the puzzle. Cause we have detectives who are specialized in elder abuse, child abuse, financial crimes, you know, specific specialties, so we know, you know, we go to that detective if something of that nature occurs. A lot of places have smaller agencies just have general detectives, which is what we were back in the day. And our detectives, we just had to figure everything out. We weren't specialized in one thing. We had to be good or adequate in everything, which is tough. It's very tough.
She did a good job with it.
Thank you. I agree. I think we did.
So as a Troutdale citizen, I've been here for 20 years. When we first moved in, we had Troutdale police. We had a neighbor who called 911 and then dropped the call and took off. We had a police officer come knocking on our door going, do you know what happened? They researched it. I felt pretty safe in our neighborhood. I don't know if I would get the same service, or I've heard stories of not getting the same type of service since Multnomah County took over. Now, I enjoy every deputy, every sheriff, every person I have met. I have no qualms with that. I guess still go back to how are those phone calls handled? Because I know they're there. Is it Multnomah County or is it 911 that's
So-
the issue? And does 911 know that we have two Troutdale officers that are supposed to stay here?
So yeah, BOAC's aware of that. Sometimes BOAC is whole nother challenge. They have their own issues going on, which we can't change.
Yeah.
But sometimes some of that information gets lost in translation. If somebody makes a 911 call and hangs up, that's a hang up. We should be there. We should respond. Again, I just got into this role just over a year and a half ago. So before I was a captain of investigations. So now I'm trying to make sure that I connect with everybody and make sure that you're getting the service that you want.
And I appreciate
Just so you
that.
know, Bob Kazi is coming tomorrow night, who's in charge of 911, to
Oh,
give
good.
an annual presentation, so some of these questions you may want to reserve for him.
Oh, I will. I'm glad, but what happens when you retire and move on?
Well, that's my job, to make sure that I plan for succession and make sure whoever's moving into my spot is ready to do a good job. That part is on me.
The Troutdale police got her daughter for going wrong. That was impressive.
You did. Good. Yeah. Anyway, anybody else have any questions or comments? Well, I appreciate you coming. If I would have known ahead of time, I probably would have had a journal for you. Because these were,
Ray has my email.
Yeah, feel free to send us other questions.
Yeah, feel free to email me.
Still a 3 a.m. just session, 3 a.m. that I could just call you.
You know, it wouldn't be my first one.
He loves it.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate, he loves
Yeah,
it.
I will say that if you call me, give me a second to get my wits about me. I get those calls quite often, so unfortunately.
I definitely appreciate you being here. I think we all do.
Yes,
Yes.
very much, and appreciate your new calculations.
And if you would like us
Thank
back, please just,
Yeah.
let us know. We're happy to come back to clarify anything or answer any further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right, Ray. Number 5, fire.
All right, this is kind of a, I don't want to say this wrong, but there's not much for you to do on that one. Honestly, I'll explain to you where we were at, but the mayor and I'll simply say the mayor and I are having a meeting tomorrow morning on the issue. On Wednesday night, there's a 3 cities council meeting together because we're all 3 on the same contract. And we're gonna discuss what our options for. The form that was attached to your, the 3 cities fire service IGA with Gresham, I'm gonna go through that right now, and this is the same thing that I've discussed with the council before, but I'll go ahead and discuss it with you. The areas in yellow are areas that were of concern to me. And that's why I'm laying them out for you, or they're important and concerning. Which is, first of all, as you saw, gosh, in last month's packet, I think I tapped to this one also, the 3 cities sent letters detailing our concerns about what Gresham was asking and needing time to adjust to it. As you see from this letter, I forwarded the letters to Mayor Scoble. They weren't forwarded to his council as far as I know. It was only the mayor, so. Before they created this letter on March 19th, I can't tell you that the council members had seen it. He said there was some conversations with the council members. Again, we were not in those conversations, even though at our meeting in early February, I did offer to Mayor Stovall for the 3 cities to send a representative to talk to their whole council about their position, like we got tonight from Multnomah County Sheriff. Mayor Stovall said, nope, he turned us down on that one. Then you get down to the next shell, each city shall pay a prorated share of net expenses based upon populations of each city. So what essentially this means is, you know, they want us to pay exactly per head what the citizens of Gresham pay for their own fire department, and I'm going to, you know, heavily weight my continued responses there, which they control and have a vote in that we don't. But that's the form they want to use, and they say they're going to do us a solid, and they're going to put a cap on those expenses. Now, they also, though, did appreciate the fact that they didn't warn us about this until this budget year, that we were going to have huge costs, and they've had a number of years to deal with, like 2.5 years to pass their own local option levy, so they have additional resources. What I'm going to hand out to you is the calculation I did. And this was within a couple percentage points. I had a more accurate one I saw by somebody else did. But this gives you a general idea of what the contract offer they made was. The first 2 years, they're going to give us a reduced rate because we need time. This is the same one we had last week. The reduced rate. And you can see that the cap at $3 to $3.50, in some ways, this is on the public record, but it's laughable because there's not one fire district in the state of Oregon that charges their citizens more than $2.90, as far as I know, in terms of cost for fire service. And they're saying they're going to cap it at $3, which is kind of odd since they're using per capita numbers. But so I don't see much of an offer there. But then you see down below where they put out the amount they're going to charge us in the first 2 years and then go to the full amount in the 3rd year. And you see on the sheet that I handed out what that actually means as a minimum and maximum payment we would have for years 3 through 7. I didn't go beyond that because you get the point. It's going to continue to go up beyond there. The other things about their offer were that they want us to commit to a minimum of 5 years. That if we terminate it before the 5 years, that we have to give them at least a 1-year opt-out. And if we did, we would have to pay them back the money they saved us in the first 2 years. So there would be a penalty for us for leaving before the end of the 5 years. And then the other thing is the IGA either may be amended or terminated should the parties mutually agree to pursue. Which means is the citizens of Troutdale, Wood Village, and Fairview would not be free in those first 5 years to be able to join a fire district without Gresham going along with us. Because they use the word mutually agree, and Gresham would have to be the one to agree, their citizens. So that makes it a little harder for us to have a little flexibility in the next couple of years to decide what to do. So that's their current offer. That's what will be discussed on our response. They said it was pretty much their last and final offer, or their last offer, I think is the phrase they used in the email to me. Was that on this one? I don't remember.
Last and final.
Yeah, their last and final, which among lawyers, that's always a joke, because what if we go back and say, we'll pay you $1 less? You know, it's like, are they gonna reject it? Well, they could, but it's always interesting to use that phrase, because everything's negotiable. But, so that's, Gresham is trying to lock us in. They are giving us 2 years to ease into it, which is, I think, just fair. It's not necessarily magnanimous on their part. It's a reasonable approach, since they did not tell us these costs were gonna go up this high until last September. But for me, the concerns are the constraints they put on us getting out of the contract, where we're locked into these rates for the next 5 years, essentially, or we pay a roughly $5 million penalty. So, anyway, like I said, there are meetings tomorrow and Wednesday on this. It's accelerating fast enough that the council's gonna have to be dealing with it on Wednesday night.
Yeah, that really makes all the difference. What we hear tomorrow from Fire District 1, essentially, will govern what we discuss on Wednesday with the other cities. And so, as of tonight, we just don't have any more information. The Gresham proposal is completely unacceptable. However, they feel that they have us over a barrel. We have to have fire service. They're the only ones providing it. They're the only ones at this moment offering to provide it. And they think we don't have any other choice. And if that's the case, we are in serious trouble. So I am very hopeful that we'll end up with an alternative option, which came up, this was discussed at the work
It's
session.
an executive
I think.
session,
Yeah,
so we can't talk about it.
oh, all right.
But
Anyway, we need to see if we have another option or not. And that will make all the difference.
Tammy?
This seems more like a year.
Couple of things, I drew a red circle on this, okay, with a line through it, just so I didn't forget that I was opposed. But a couple of things, first off, we go into this and we have a cap at $3 per thousand. And in 29, we go to $3.50 per thousand as the cap. Now, just so that we get this, presently we pay 3.76 now for
our
everything.
permanent tax rate for everything in the general fund.
Everything is 3.76.
Police,
when we-
fire, parks,
Yeah,
everything.
Everything. Now, when we go to 350 as an example, based on our tax value in Gresham's, we will be paying over $4 a thousand proportionately, and they will be paying like $2.96. Everybody follow that?
It's unacceptable.
Okay, we have more high-value property than what they do, and so when you divide it out by the properties, the citizens of Troutdale are gonna be paying equivalent of $4, over $4 a thousand, and Gresham will be paying less than $3.
Right, so you understand, that I've checked with the other cities, compared to Wood Village, Fairview, and Gresham, per population, we have a higher tax assessed value in Troutdale than they do. So if we were in a fire district or we had a local option levy, we would be able to collect more money than they would at the same number, because we have large establishments like Amazon, FedEx, Troutdale Cubes, coming online as the battery farm. We have several large property value items in this city, McMinimums. that add to our value. So we have disproportionately more assessed value than we do population compared to other cities. That makes sense?
Okay, so as far as our citizens go, that's kind of a little bit the epitome of getting screwed, I would say. Now, if you look at some other cities, right, with their tax rate, their local option levy, all of those things, public safety, I'm gonna pick on Happy Valley here because they have Clackamas Fire. Clackamas Fire with all their costs is $261 a thousand. Okay? Canby has their own fire department, they're $180 a thousand. And Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue is $1.93 a thousand. And we're gonna pay $3 a thousand for Western Family Fire Service. And if you look at these, when you add all these together, just so we know where the whole tax thing's going, you take Wilsonville, which uses Clackamas County Sheriff. I don't think they have their own police right now. I think they still
There are
have the
three
sheriff.
cities, I know Happy Valley, and I don't know the other two cities off the top of my
I
head.
think they're still with the sheriff, but
They could be.
for law enforcement, everything, $475 a thousand, including fire. Canby has their own police department, their own fire department, $525 a thousand. Happy Valley, where the well-heeled people live, they are $5.51 a thousand. And Tiger, which is Tualatin Valley Fire, including that, is $465 a thousand. And we're talking about doing 3 potentially, plus what we have, that would be $676 a thousand. I mean, really?
Yeah, but I mean, that's coming out of our general fund, so you're looking at the end of the day, you're gonna have 20 cents
What do you mean?
to do things with.
No, what I'm saying is, okay, I guess my point,
Isn't our total tax rate 376 that goes to our general fund right now?
Yes.
our total is
Right.
376, right? And if we do a fire district, we're 676. Canby has their own police and fire, no fire district, they're 525 all in. I know we're under, but what I'm saying is, Wilsonville's 475 all in, including the fire district. Tiger's 465, including the fire district.
Is your
So-
fire district cost on top of ours, is that like the high end? Is that what you were kind of calculating?
What I'm saying is, if we put fire district on top of ours, we're at 676, we're higher than anybody,
Well, if we do it at $3.
which you would,
Well, with Gresham's offer.
yeah.
That's Gresham's.
Even if you did it at
just-
280 or 250, you would be higher than anybody.
Well, I'm sticking on fact, not higher than anybody in the state. There are other
Okay,
cities higher than that.
there are others.
Yeah.
But around here,
There's not a lot higher than 670 though.
no.
Portland is one example.
We can't even use Portland.
No, I know, it's not
They
fair.
now own the moniker of the highest taxes in the country. They added another one, so they're number one. They took out New York. I'm proud of them.
City of Portland, yeah.
And I had one question where he's saying in here that he wanted clarification on, confirm that Troutdale's complied with,
I already complied.
okay,
But the council passed that almost about a year ago. We have to do double codes.
the inspection thing or something, yeah.
Yeah, the fire code. We adopted the same fire code. We have to do
Okay.
our fire code. I quickly responded back to that one saying, we're done. So,
So I know there might not be a lot of options, but, this is certainly not somebody you wanna get in a fire district with.
well, and honestly, I will just tell you, as I indicated, we can't leave this contract for 5 years and to a fire district unless we mutually agree, which means Gresham. Honestly, from the things that I've seen and heard from the management overall at City of Gresham, they don't really have a strong desire to want to even pursue a fire district.
Well,
They want to have their own Gresham Fire Department.
Which
I
is
might have some
basically saying you can't
conflicting
do it at all.
information, but
Pardon?
I said I might have some conflicting information.
Well, yeah, but
There was some,
there may be some leaders over there on of council, but it's not an easy road for them to get to a fire district. How about we say that?
Rich?
The way I read that, that basically says we would have to opt out of any decent negotiating position in the future. I mean, you go from bad to worse.
Well, you wouldn't have a negotiating position, you'd be married to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't do it without mutually doing it with them, and they either decide not to do it, or they decide to do something that is not in our best interest, we're stuck. That's not good.
That's a good observation of, we've tied our wagon to their horse and we can't untie it.
I mean, that's the whole reason we're here is we're in a bad situation, going worse.
We'll know more in a couple days, that's
Yeah.
all I can say. I mean, I agree, we can't tie ourselves into this proposal. It's out of the question. I don't know what we do, but we've gotta figure something else out.
So I guess the question is, if we didn't renew a contract with Gresham and we had a fire, who's responsible?
Oh, no, we'll have to, you mean without providing fire service?
Yes.
Oh, we couldn't do that.
We have to by law provide some kind of fire service.
No, it's just as a practical matter, all the homeowners in town have fire
Fire insurance.
insurance policies
Yeah,
that are based on their being a
Yeah.
fire department. So we just can't do that. So we've got to figure something else out.
Is this legal, what's going on here?
Yeah,
That they're holding us over a barrel, sure. It's interesting, I don't know if any of you read the 2015 renewal. That was the third 10-year renewal. We had already done it with them for 20 years. And in 1015, their whereases and all the preliminary stuff was about the great mutual service provided by Gresham to its fellow citizens in the other cities, and how that we'd enjoyed a great relationship, and on, and everybody was delighted to renew it for another 10 years. Boy, I don't know what changed, because I don't think anything in the way of demands on Gresham's fire services from us has changed, but their tune has certainly changed. No more Mr. Nice Guy, I guess I'd say. So anyway, let's see if we can come up with an alternative. That's what I advise, that's what we're gonna try. Wednesday, we're all gonna, well, all the city councils and managers and are meeting at Wood Village at 6 o'clock to discuss what we're gonna do. We don't know anything right now about whether we have another option, but we might by tomorrow morning.
you know, it's interesting, and this goes back, you were talking about Wilsonville and stuff. Both Wilsonville and Happy Valley have contracts with Clackamas County Sheriff to provide their police coverage. Happy Valley and Wilsonville have almost the same population. They're 10,000 more than Troutdale. There are 26,000 people in both those cities. And Happy Valley's budgeted this year 5.7 for police. Wilsonville has budgeted 6.7 for police. And for cities that are 1/3 bigger than ours, and we're looking at the same amount of money from the sheriff's office for a 1/3 smaller city.
Yeah.
It's,
With a hub.
it's
Yeah.
interesting comparison, but yeah. With fire, again, what I'm looking for the city and hoping for the city is that for both police and fire, we have short-term options that we can afford without impacting our ending fund balance very much. We're gonna have, that's why we have a savings account, I call it. You know, we're gonna have to dig it a little bit, but we need to get to the citizens' options to stabilize our long-term fire and police protection in a way that will cost the citizens more, but it provides us more control and more stability, because we're at the whims of two other agencies right now.
Well, I think the citizens would be pretty upset from it going from what we're paying now to 3.5.
If I had a Troutdale Police Department, would that soften the blow?
No, because we're still having to pay it.
No, but if you're, I mean, if you do the math, and I've kind of played with it, if you did a local option levy at about $1.80 to $1.90, and then brought ours up to about $5.50, $5.60, that should get you enough money to pay for a police department. Don't look at me like that, Sandy. A police department, and be able to afford some type of fire service from somebody else. What was your question, Danny? I could tell you a question.
I was just wanting to know, was it built out of gold, or what was the building, you know,
What's that?
the fire department?
Oh, no. They provide us enough income that we would be able to afford both, not to the level that we would like, but at least to a level that we could survive with. Because if you have a 1.8, 1.9 per thousand, you're gonna get approximately $4 million a year in additional income from a local option.
For fire?
For whatever you want, it'll go to the general fund to use for fire, police contracts, or to use for establishing a police department. Because right now, the police department, we pay $4 million in our budget this year for police. Our consultant said we should be able to do it for 5.7. When I've looked at 4 other cities, the Dalles, Pendleton, St. Helens, who have police departments a similar size of what we would have, just like we've had before, they're paying between 5.7 and 6.3. So I think our estimate of 5.7 isn't really far off the mark. What we could do, it's gonna be around $6 million. So if you add $4 million to our general fund, $2 million of it gets added to the $4 million we're paying now in current dollars, and there's your $6 million for your own police department. Then you have $2 million extra dollars to help pay for a fire service, whether it's from Gresham or somebody else. And so that's what I'm talking about in terms of being able to give us a little more control and ability to afford these things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is
It's
like
not necessarily desirable.
10 years down the road, what's the increased cost gonna be then? And we're never gonna, our tax rate will never keep up with that. So at some point, whereas more taxes suck and nobody wants them, you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing we hear a lot. We're gonna still eventually be in a hard place if we don't do something and add more revenue.
In a perfect world, I think the best answer is you form a fire district. And you take those fundings out of the general fund, that way you get a vote on the fire board. And it's paid for in addition to city taxes, but that frees up all that money to use for a police department. And local option levies, and every 5 years you have to go back and say please again to the citizens. Those are not a permanent solution.
Right.
A fire district is a permanent solution, unless the bright people of 1995 vote to leave Fire District 10, and then it's not a permanent or wise decision. So,
Rich?
Well, I'm definitely open to ideas, but I would have to say that this is definitely a shot across the bow that I think they're an emergency situation. And we gotta figure it out. So,
yeah,
I find this to be the most concerning issue in front of the city right at the moment.
yeah, and I will tell you, it's not everybody over at Gresham who is trying to get us over a barrel. I mean, I've talked to people within the fire department, not at management level, but they see what's going on here with Gresham. They're just trying to hold us over a barrel, get as much money as they can, because they don't want to keep on to their fire department and not have to deal with the fire district as long as possible.
Yeah, I mean, their budget is bad. And kind of the general thing that was conveyed to me is that for them to help keep up with that, they need the most money they can get from us. This is the easiest way to do it, to help add to that a little bit.
Yeah, we're looked at as a cash cow.
It's a small cow,
It is.
Yeah,
more like a calf.
well, this is obviously one of the disadvantages of not having any control or say.
Yeah, I mean,
Kind of whether
yeah.
they're gonna be nice or not nice.
I feel like in my position, like, I don't even know what to say or to do, because I feel like we have no leverage, no options. I mean, if we don't, we could say, oh, we're not gonna provide fire service, but we can't do that because that's, that's not gonna be good for anybody.
And what happens if we go into a fire district, and some of those same leaders become the board of the fire district and they're outnumbered?
Well, the fire district has to provide you fire service, so like it's strictly for fire. The fire district takes care of the fire for you, like.
The firemen's unions all love fire districts.
Of course they do.
The fire district is not would not be a problem.
No, the reason is
Political
because
problem.
a fire district, they don't have to fight with the police department or parks for money. They have their own segregated thing, and second of all, they have a board of people who's just devoted to knowing how to run a fire department, as opposed to, a city council that is competing for all these different interests. So that's why that's why firefighters like a fire district, because they know the whole purpose of their budget and their leadership is to provide good fire protection.
But if you do a fire district with Gresham, how
Not
do
with
you
Gresham.
still maintain some kind of control towards?
They would be part of the fire district and have just as much say.
Yeah,
But
the city-
but the service gets provided for whatever your fire district rate is.
The fire district has its own governing board.
Right.
The citizens of Gresham have a vote, as the citizens of Troutdale do, on that board. But that doesn't mean the city of Gresham would have any say at all that would
But you-
override Troutdale's
But
interest.
you have a vote
Yeah.
on the board,
Right.
and Gresham would have one vote as well?
No, usually it'd be by district, I think, by population. They'd be
Right.
equal population district.
I think that's what we're saying, would be small number and they'd be large.
Yeah, but
So-
there's,
We
but
still
they're
would have
all
a say.
dedicated to,
Yeah, you'd have
To
a
being
say.
a
If
fire
someone
district.
from Troutdale would be on the board of the fire districts, you'd have a say. Whereas
Yeah.
now you have nothing. You have no
Okay.
say.
A
You don't even,
minority position.
You have a small say, but you would be one voice out of 7.
but what are they gonna do? Like, they're gonna move all the fire service to Gresham? No, that's.
No, what I'm saying is, you're not really gonna have any control over how much they spend, what their priorities are, or anything like that.
Troutdale would have no control. It would be run by the district. The district is a separate government. It would be separately voted on with separate representatives.
Which would primarily be staffed with Gresham residents.
Not necessarily, Tanny, I don't know why you think that. You guys,
Isn't it done by population?
they would hire district personnel based on skills or whatever they are. They wouldn't be based on whether they favor Gresham or don't. They would be, everybody would be dedicated to providing fire services.
Right, and there would be no Gresham City Council members on the fire district board,
No.
because they can't legally do it.
Right, they can't do
It
it.
wouldn't be that at all, so
And they
I,
couldn't be any meaner to us than they're willing to be to themselves. That is
Yeah.
what I think.
no, in
It
fact,
just
they
sounds a
wouldn't
lot
be.
rosier than when I experienced this in the past, okay?
But what we're saying is, at least we have one vote in the room.
Yeah.
Now we have
I
zero.
think we have 0 votes now. I don't think they're going to give us anything that would be, they're in the thing that talks about, they're gonna reestablish this fire advisory board or whatever,
Oh, yeah,
which is
that's
a
just
bunch of
window
blown smoke
dressing.
up, where,
Right.
to make you feel like, but the reality is, we don't have anything, we're not gonna get anything, and you just have to take what you get, which I don't think is.
Well, right now, they can hose us and take care of themselves,
I mean,
right?
yeah, and I guess what I'm
But
saying
in
in
the fire
that,
district, at least,
yeah,
whatever they do, they're gonna
Right.
have to suffer that same penalty.
we have to have serious conversations about, we're gonna have to accept this and be ready to go for 5 years. And in the time like right now, we would take with reestablishing the Troutdale Police Department, we would have to have serious conversations on how do we do this, how do we go towards a fire district? Because people have to vote on it, it's gonna cost them more money, and people have to understand why.
Well, I don't see this as a viable option. It's a non-starter, really.
Oh,
We
you're talking about-
might not
yeah,
have to
fire.
go for 5 years with this.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but.
That's what we'll know in a couple of days.
I also want to point out on this, Ray, like, we asked for a 3-year ramp up, we get a 2-year ramp up. And in my conversations I had, like, this is a 3-year ramp up, well, this is a 2-year ramp up, I just want us to be
Is it
clear
close to one? For the calendar?
2, It'd be 2 years.
75%.
Prorated,
In 2 years, it goes to the full
85%,
amount,
yeah.
which by then will be
3
4
years
point,
is 100%.
but
yeah, it'll be 4.7 in 2 years.
without other options, we don't have another option, which is the crappy part of this. I mean, I don't know.
How did they, okay, so since you guys talked to them, how did they justify the $3 a thousand anyhow?
Oh, well, we tried, Tanny, we tried everything to
What was their,
explain that,
what was their
why it was not
methodology to
fair.
that?
Well,
But
actually, the $3 cap, it came out of the blue. We never
Yeah.
discussed that $3
there
cap.
was never a $3 cap.
They
but,
put it in there.
They elected not to answer any of our questions, really. They just said, hey, Gresham residents are paying this, therefore, we have to charge you the same. I mean, essentially, I'm talking politically.
Yeah, I mean, the fact
That's what
that
it
for
is. That's
30
what it
years,
amounts
that's not how our fee's been
Yeah.
charged, didn't matter to them. We, as, you know, as Jeffrey, you know, they need the money, they can ask for it, and
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, what do you want, like, I guess my question back to you would be, what would we use to change any of this?
Well, I guess what I don't understand is, okay, and I get where you guys are at, but wait a second here, okay? It's subpar service to what Gresham gets.
Yep.
And you're charging more than anybody for it. How do you justify that?
Because they can.
And
That is all it is.
trust me,
Yeah.
the mayor and I have said that, I've said that more forcefully and many more times.
I appreciate
and
that,
all I get is,
I haven't been there.
you haven't
okay?
processed it like I have.
No,
but
I haven't seen any
I
of
just
this,
get a
right?
dumbfounded look that says, so what?
Yeah.
Honestly,
What are
you know, I don't
What are you
get-
gonna do about
Yeah,
it?
okay.
And, I mean, Tanny, we asked, we
Yeah.
explained, we pointed out, we gave them diagrams. It's not fair, it's,
And they shrug and going, here's the price.
yeah, and they sent us this, take it or leave it, first, last and final, let's say.
I wanna say, I was not in those, but you could just see the writing on the wall, and I'm like, I wish if we had another option to use as leverage, that gives you something. For instance, could reestablish the Troutdale Police Department, but like,
Right.
even, the previous negotiations with them, like, they kind of don't really care what happened back then, just like with this.
Yeah.
You know, the nice language and the nice, we wanna be partners and whatnot. This is what it is, so take it or leave it, that's kind of how I feel.
It feels like run out the clock until you don't have any options.
Yeah.
But there's no way we can accept this.
Victoria.
Sorry.
So what if we just say, this is our first and last, this is what we can afford? Are they just gonna dump it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what we're meeting on Wednesday for with the three councils.
Yeah,
Because then they'll be out all the money they should have had. I mean, if that's all we can afford, that's all we can afford. You take it or leave
I
it.
know I'm repeating myself in other meetings I've had and stuff like this, but what has annoyed me most is how they waited till the last year of these contracts to start exposing us to, oh crap, you're gonna have to pay a ton more. So we haven't had any ramp up time to be able to adjust to it. I mean, we did have the Safer Council 4 or 5 years ago where we met with Gresham and all the cities. We were having an open conversation about regional fire service into the future. And then 3 years ago, Gresham pulled the plug on it, stopped the meetings, and never told us why. They just stopped communicating with us on the future of fire service until they give us this big offer last September. And that's what bothers me most about the bad faith of just generally how Gresham has treated us in the fire service. So,
And we had no exit clause.
well, we have no other option though.
yeah, the exit clause was that the contract expires on June 30th, 2025.
Go fight your own
That's
fires.
the exit clause.
Yeah.
I read the whole thing, looking for
Yeah, no.
loophole.
something, well, something that
Yeah.
would require them to extend service if an
Not
offer
to
was
stop
made,
them.
but there
Never do
wasn't
that.
anything.
Always have a good exit clause.
Well, yeah.
Well,
Well, the-
anyway,
The concern I have, we have 2 months, 2.5 months. This doesn't make me feel good.
This will be resolved.
yeah,
It's not like we haven't been
alternatives are
trying.
being looked at.
No, I get that. I understand that.
And I will
And I
say,
understand the city has been trying. But when we get, this is just frustrating, and I hope that city council will look at that having both contracts due at the same time is the stupidest idea this city has ever done, the council has ever done. I don't care who was on the council, Rich Allen. Whoever made that decision to have two of these at the same time is just too overwhelming.
I agree with you 100%.
So I hope that when we look at these contracts, and I hope we figure out something else besides Gresham, because I don't want to be owing Gresham.
Does Port of Portland have a fire over at our airport?
No.
No, we
Yeah.
don't out there.
We don't have a fire over truck.
There's no fire department at the
No,
airport.
we just burn. Okay.
That's great. Twyla, did you have anything?
I have nothing to add. I think it's all been said.
Okay.
No, right now, we have no leverage with Gresham, but just know that the mayor and I and other people are working on.
We're working on it.
We're working on it.
And, you know, 10 years ago, there wasn't, the fire contract wasn't difficult to renew. They renewed it with mutual,
Love and affection.
yeah, hugging. But getting rid of the police department wasn't something that was coming up for renewal, or I mean, that was such a big thing, and it happened to be 10 years ago, and it happened to be a 10-year contract. And I was on record very much opposed to the
We
thing.
objected.
But, yeah, but, you know, they happened to come up together. But,
You could have made the sheriff's contract 11 years, the fire contract 9 years, you know?
I wanted it to be 0 years.
I know, so,
Anyway,
I get it.
but anyway, that was, you know, it all looks like it should have been obvious, but anyway.
All right, I want to honor everybody's time. So, next meeting.
What, was it postmortem probably? I mean, in a bad way, but it'll probably be after the shouting is done, the next meeting is just because I hope by May, something's resolved in more definition for us.
Yes, at least we ought to meet in May.
Yeah,
But we should, if need be, we could call an earlier interim meeting, but we got an awful lot of meetings coming up. We're hiring
Yeah.
a new,
I mean, I'm just suggesting May 12th, a Monday.
When do Troutdale and Gresham both have a chance to have a city council meeting, and we meet after that?
well, May 12th we certainly would have had a council meeting, Gresham
I
would
know,
too.
but time is not a friend. Can we say that it sucked that in a little bit? Give them a chance to discuss this if they even want to?
Give them a chance to discuss it?
Well, ourselves and them a chance.
I hate to say it, but this is being dictated to them, and you might have more information, but it doesn't seem like we're gonna get anything.
Yeah, the Gresham is not expressing
We
any
might need to
interest
do
when
what
we get a
Victoria
council
said.
discussion.
No, I don't know, I don't see an advantage.
I agree with Dave.
Yeah.
I don't see an
As
advantage.
far as we can tell, it's being run from Gresham by the city manager and the mayor.
So let's make it May 12th and meet sooner
Something happens.
if we have some exciting thing to discuss. My,
Does that work for everybody?
The 12th?
Yep.
You know, always keep you updated along the way if something happens with
I
your
prefer
shadows.
sooner, but.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
Travis. All right. Have a good evening, all adjourned.
So don't we have to vote on that?
Oh,
Aye.
Aye.
aye,
I'm just saying it was unanimous.
all right.
can we go off record?